Yeah, here we go. Awesome. So I am super excited, everybody. Welcome to today's live stream. I want to make sure that we can introduce you to the members of the group. So tell me a little bit about how you got started as an expert in Pinterest. I find it absolutely fascinating, that you're specializing like this in something that is really going to help a lot of people elevate their businesses.
Oh, okay, sure. Thank you. Like I said, I'm really glad to be here. Glad to be joining you today. So I'm Jana O, and my last name is Osofsky, so I go by Jana O. And I basically I am a content manager and Pinterest strategist, and I work specifically with coaches and consultants and course creators and service providers, really, in the online field. And how did I get into Pinterest? I mean, I've always been a lover of Pinterest. Ever since it first came out, I was like an early adopter and enjoyed using it for my own purposes, for curating ideas and for, like collecting thoughts and pictures that would inspire me in certain situations, etc. And it was probably just about a couple of years ago when I started realizing that not only were food bloggers and Etsy sellers and people who were selling products on Pinterest for business, but there were actually service providers on there too, coaches and course creators and consultants. And I got really interested in the idea of how that could work. And I saw this great possibility for it because it's really an evergreen platform. And once it's set up optimally, it can be super low maintenance. And so it's really different than a lot of other platforms that coaches and course creators and consultants use to generate leads. In that way, it has a lot of benefits that other platforms don't offer. So I started learning about it, and I worked on my own profile for a while, took on some coaches as a sort of practice run a couple of years ago, and kind of just hit the ground running from there. And since then, I've set up dozens of profiles, and I do a little bit of management of accounts as well. And there's a whole community of us Pinterest managers and Pinterest strategists. So if I discover people who aren't coaches or course creators or consultants, but want to do Pinterest, I help them find people who can help them with that. And I do the strategy and setup for the coaches and the consultants and course creators. So that's kind of a little bit about how I came into Pinterest and found out about it and its power for this particular group of people.
Awesome. And you know what I love about it, what you said too, was that it's low maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
And isn't that wonderful that there actually is a marketing avenue in social media today? I guess we can call it social media, or would we call it like an interweb?
Technically it's not social media, which is one of the reasons it is so low maintenance, because it's really, the culture on Pinterest is not really social in the sense that you don't have to go on every day and engage and be thoughtful and, really post something new every single day, multiple times per day, like you might on a social media channel. So we can talk more about that. But so it's really a visual search engine, Pinterest.
Excellent. Okay. Well, good. So I'm super excited about this. I know that there's a lot of other people that are really excited about this. One of the things that I am really curious about is who is Pinterest really for? Like, who can really benefit from marketing here on Pinterest?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. Who is Pinterest for as far as users and as far as marketers? So there's really users and marketers. In terms of like who is on Pinterest, and this kind of answers a little bit of both of those two questions. There are about 200 billion users now. It was about 175, and now it's closer to 2. So about half of those, a little over half of them, are in the U.S., and a little bit of little less than half basically are outside the U.S. It is still mostly women, although there are men starting to come on board a little bit, but it's still mostly women. The average household income is a lot higher on Pinterest than it is other social channels. So that's something to be, sort of be considered when you're thinking about marketing on Pinterest. About 87% of pinners, a lot of this comes from Omnicore, which does like this big study, and they did a white paper in 2018 about Pinterest. It's called Pinterest by the Numbers, if anyone's interested in looking it up. They found that about 87% of pinners report to have purchased something based on what they saw or discovered on Pinterest. So the people who are on there are really looking for like ideas and inspiration, and they're really in a frame of mind where they're like, how can I make my life better? How can I make, my business better? And they're looking for solutions to problems that they have. So that's kind of like who's there. It's like a site where people go for inspiration and to learn about how to make things better. And really to spend their money. They're actually looking for ways to spend their money. Because if you think about it, the traditional way that we think of Pinterest is like recipes, weddings, and people go on there, like if they're going to make a recipe, that means they're going to have to go out and buy the ingredients. If they're going to plan a wedding, it means they're going to have to go out and spend some money on the elements that it requires to plan a wedding, right? So it's something to think about in terms of the marketing. In terms of marketing, there are a lot of people on there that are selling products, a lot of crafters, a lot of Etsy stores, Shopify stores. There are a lot of people who are very prolific bloggers as well, who are blogging all different kinds of lifestyle topics. And then, recently over the last couple of years, you definitely have seen like some coaches, course creators, consultants come on, and some of them are doing really, really well with lead generation on Pinterest. So really anybody who has a website that they want to drive traffic to.
Or a YouTube channel.
Yeah, you can definitely send traffic from your Pinterest to other places, like to your YouTube channel or to landing pages that are outside of your website too, if you use lead pages or something like that. So if you're looking to drive traffic and you have something to say as far as content, which most people do, not everybody, but most people, then it can be useful. It can be something that you can use to drive that traffic.
I love that so much. And, a lot of my clients are online entrepreneurs, but within that, they have YouTube channels, they have blogs, but a lot of them are consultants and coaches. So would you say that coaches and consultants have caught on to this yet? I mean, you've talked about bloggers, how they've caught on to, generating traffic to their blogs, but what about the consultants and the coaches? Are they into this yet?
They're starting to, yes. And there are some reasons why it's a little bit like people haven't discovered it in as large like numbers, if you will, as you might think when you think about how great a platform it is and how well it does do for some coaches and consultants. There are some barriers that people hit when they try to get on it as a coach or a consultant or a service provider. And I can kind of talk about those and how to kind of move past them as well. But yeah, there's definitely, they're starting to catch on, and the people who have figured out how to set up an optimal profile are doing really well. I think it's important to know that most of the time for people in this category, I feel like I've said consultants, coaches, course creators like 25 times, so I'm just going to say our people now from now on. I'll still make sure that, for our people, the most important KPI with Pinterest or the key performance indicator is typically to grow your email list. That is usually what you're using Pinterest for. If you're driving traffic to your content and getting people to immediately join your coaching program, that's awesome. And if you're driving people to your YouTube and you're getting them to subscribe, that's awesome as well. It's kind of like gravy, I guess. But really for most of my clients, we're really trying hard to grow their email list. And then once someone's on their email list, that's where that nurture sequence takes over, and they're going to see your YouTube videos, and they're going to join your Facebook group, and they're going to, if they're someone who is going to purchase from you, they're going to go down that funnel and eventually, become a paying customer. But the most important way to convert that traffic from Pinterest to something that's valuable for you is to get those people on your email list.
Got it. So one of the things that you said I felt was really important. You had mentioned, we're talking about our people here, and you were talking about how there's some barriers there for them, right? And how maybe they're not really using it so much. So let's kind of get into that. So why wouldn't our people be doing it? What are those barriers that are causing them to not really get involved in using Pinterest to drive traffic?
Yeah. So I think there's really two, or like they fall into two categories. The first one is what we started to talk about, is that people, when they hear about Pinterest, and I get this all the time when I post Pinterest tips or something like that, invariably I'll have someone who's like a super like savvy, educated person who's like our people coach or consultant say, oh, Pinterest, I didn't realize that I could generate leads with Pinterest. I think of it as just for recipes and weddings and events and things like that. So we do still think of it that way. And I'm sure, I use it for that for sure. I don't know if you do. I'm sure some of the listeners definitely are curating boards about like what to make for dinner tonight and where they want to go on their next vacation and stuff like that. So they think of it that way and they don't think of it as a business tool. And it takes a little bit of like a mindset shift to start thinking, okay, I know how I use Pinterest. If I were to step into the shoes of my ideal client and think, okay, my ideal client is also on Pinterest. What are they looking for? What solutions are they looking for? What content are they curating? How can I give them that content, be that content, and then drive them to my website or to my content where they can learn more about this solution that I provide, and maybe it is the right one for them. So you shift that mindset a little bit, but that's the first one, is that people are still thinking of it as something that's more for homemaking and the weddings and whatnot. And then the second barrier, I would say, is that people are still thinking of it as a social media platform. So if a coach, for instance, thinks to themselves, okay, this is the weekend where I'm going to give myself a little retreat and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to learn how to figure out how to optimize Pinterest. I'm going to watch some videos. I'm going to make some pins for myself on Canva. I'm going to pin my blog post to my Pinterest page instead of just always pinning other people's content. They start, if they've had some success on social media, like on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter even, LinkedIn maybe. Instagram's a great example because people compare Instagram and Pinterest a lot because they're both like visual, but they're so different. If they start to try to apply the same concepts that they know have worked for them on social media to Pinterest, they quickly realize that, number one, if you just curate images and you put images of yourself like you do on Instagram or selfies or whatnot on Pinterest, like it doesn't go anywhere. It's not really going to do anything for you. And then they hear things like, on Pinterest, you pin like 30 times a day. And they're like, what? Like, how in the world could I come up with 30 different things?
Oh my gosh, no, I haven't heard that.
Every day. Right. And it's true. That's a best practice.
That's a best practice?
It is. Yeah. Like 15 to 30 pins a day. Yep. So, but the thing to understand about it is that it's not social media. It's more of a search engine, and the pins that you pin are evergreen. So when you create a pin, you're actually creating something that isn't going to be lost in someone's feed. It's, on Facebook, like, you're lucky if the post that you put up is there for more than 5 or 6 minutes until someone else bumps you down the feed. And, maybe you get lucky and people are commenting a lot. And so it keeps getting bumped to the top, which is great. So you get a little more exposure for it. On Twitter, the average tweet lasts like a minute and a half, I think, before it's gone and no one sees it anymore. On Pinterest, the pins are actually evergreen, and they'll be around for months and months and sometimes even years. And they'll keep resurfacing and they'll keep being repinned by people. And sometimes you'll even see one that does okay in the beginning, and then 6 months down the road or 8 months down the road, it goes viral and creates, like loads and loads of traffic for you. And that was something that you pinned, 8 or 9 months ago. So it's, the barrier is that people try to apply the same concepts that they've learned about social media to Pinterest, and they realize it's not going to work. And they're like, all right, this is not what I was thinking it is. And they get either distracted or they get discouraged. Right. And they'll go off and they'll just do something else. So they'll and I see that with a lot of my clients is they'll say, well, I started a Pinterest account and it's got some pins and stuff on it, but I never really figured it out. So now I'm ready for you to, help me figure it out. So it happens a lot where they kind of get started, but don't really understand how to leverage it. So I'd say the two things is thinking that it's only for weddings and recipes. And then the second one being thinking that it's a social media platform and applying the same principles and getting discouraged.
All right. So now I'm still stuck on 30 times a day. So,
okay.
So what I want to do is I want to clarify there. So does that include like repinning as well? Or is that your unique images that you would create? So clearly, we're talking about, maybe a consultant or a coach who's going to Canva, which is a really great tool to actually create an image and drive traffic to an opt-in or a blog post where there's an opt-in there, or YouTube
Exactly.
where you can subscribe and that sort of thing. So they're creating one image per what? I mean, you've got to have 30 images per day. Where are they getting these images?
I know, right? That's what people think. They're like, what? Right. So you're exactly right, Sharon. It's like the 30 per day. And that's not a hard and fast rule. It could be 20 for one account that does better. It could be 40 for a different account that does better. But it is a combination of your original content pins that are pointing to your content. other people's pins that you're curating for your audience as well, because that's part of what helps you in the algorithms and what helps your ideal client know that you're a good fit for them. And then it also includes what you mentioned, which is repins. So every time you're doing 30 pins in a day, and by the way, you're not sitting there doing the pins manually. If you're serious about Pinterest, you have a scheduling software and you do it all in batches. So you're not having to like live on Pinterest every day. That would defeat the purpose of being low maintenance. But you're repinning your content that you've already created in the past. You're also from time to time,
which you've already created in the past.
Right. So you're kind of like always adding to your stable of content. And every time you go and schedule out your content, you're strategically repinning the content that you've created in the past to the same places and to new places. So that's kind of the gist of it, if you will.
Okay. That's really good. All right.
Does that answer your question about where the 30 come from?
I believe so. And I would really love for anybody who's watching here to also contribute here. So if you need clarification on this, be sure to drop a comment here below. I think that really helps to clarify it a lot.
Okay.
So now what I'm curious about is if you could give us a basic idea of how Pinterest actually works for coaches and consultants, like kind of dive into some detail there.
Yeah, absolutely. I call that like the Pinterest funnel, like the basics of the Pinterest funnel. Yeah. So it is a search engine. So when you create your pins, you're creating great visuals, and you're also, your entire account, in order to be optimized, has to be keyword optimized because it's a search engine. So it's a little bit like YouTube in that way, and it's a lot like Google in that way, except that Pinterest, of course, is its own ecosystem. So it's a search engine in and of itself. So you basically take a couple steps back, figure out what you'd like to rank for, what your keywords are going to be. I do this for my clients, and it's something you can definitely DIY. You make a list of all the keywords that you think your ideal client might be searching for when they would come upon the content that you have that could help solve their issues or their problems, or help, inspire them in some way. And then you actually plug those into the Pinterest search bar to find out what the keywords actually are that people are searching for that are relevant to your content. And then you keyword optimize your profile, all of your pins, your board names, your board descriptions, your profile, etc. So when your ideal client, as an example, let's just use, I just set up an account recently for a parenting coach. So if your ideal client is online looking for solutions about why their toddler isn't sleeping, as an example, and they plug in the information, they're like, why isn't my toddler sleeping, or sleep issues for kids, or something like that. If your pin is properly keyword optimized, it could come up in their search feed. And it also could come up in their smart feed, which is where Pinterest puts things for them when they first come onto their Pinterest. It's like their Pinterest home, kind of, based on what they've searched for before and what types of things they pin. Pinterest says, here, you might like this content. So if your pins are properly keyword optimized, then they could come up in their searches. And about 90% of people who see your content on Pinterest are not even your followers. So it's super different in that way too than, say, like an Instagram or a Facebook, where no one sees your stuff unless they like your page, right? So they see that pin, they might click on it if they're motivated to do so, and that's a whole other thing to talk about, how to design pins that will motivate people to click. They might make it bigger. They might read it a little bit more carefully. They might click through it. And that is the holy grail, that we want them to click through the pin to your website to get more detail. And that pin might point to a blog post about the topic that they're currently researching, or that they didn't even know they were interested in, but Pinterest showed them this pin based on what they've searched for before. And they're like, oh yeah, that is interesting to me. Let me click through it and see. They read your information. Hopefully the content on your website or your YouTube channel builds like some of that know, like, and trust factor that's so important. At some point in the process, just, depending on your strategy, you ask them to go a little further with you. That might mean opting into your email list in order to get a freebie that might be a bedtime routine checklist for that child who's not sleeping. I don't even have kids, so I'm totally making this up. It might not be the right thing. I hope none of the moms out there are like, that's not a thing. But, this is just, I literally just came up with this off the top of my head. But So they say, yeah, I liked her blog post. She sounds like she knows what she's talking about. I would like that checklist. I'm going to give her my email. And now, your email nurture sequence takes over from there. And you may have multiple freebies. You may have different blog posts that have different types of content upgrades right in the blog post. You can point pins directly to landing pages that have freebies as well. Those are possibilities, and different things convert better for different accounts depending on how your funnel's set up. But that's the basic funnel, is that people are clicking through your content, through your pin, getting to your content, and then taking action based on what you're hoping that they'll do and the calls to action that you've placed in your content on your website.
Great. So now we have someone asking a question here. Asma is asking a question. Should we pin a picture from our website or upload the picture and add a link in the description? That's a really great question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. You can do either one. Either one accomplishes getting a pin onto your site, onto your profile, your Pinterest profile, or into your board, I should say. It is really good once you get into the swing of things and you're doing scheduling regularly, when you add new content, it is really good. Pinterest does like it when you pin it, or especially also when other people have the option of pinning it directly from your website. So that's one of the reasons why having a plugin like the jQuery plugin, or other types of plugins that offer people on your website the option to pin your content, social share buttons basically, is a good idea. So you can do either one. If you pin directly from your site, you just want to make sure that the image that you're pinning is an optimal Pinterest pin image. They need to be vertical. It's typically 600 by 900 is the ratio, and it is important for the user experience that they be vertical, and it's also important for the Pinterest algorithms. Pinterest doesn't like squatty pins that are hard to read and hard to see because of the way their feed works. So that would be the only thing I'd say, is just if you're going to pin directly from your site, make sure that you have added a Pinterest-friendly image that you're pinning, not just any image that you might use in a different format on your website.
That makes a lot of sense. And, it just seems like it would just be a lot of wasted time. You go through the trouble of creating an image and putting it on your website, and then, wanting to generate traffic to it using Pinterest, and then inadvertently not even realizing that you don't have the right orientation, the right size, and not ultimately getting the traffic that you wanted. So it's really just something that's useless. So it's not that those little squatty pins never do well, but they don't typically do as well. And like one best practice, like one of my retainer clients, when we optimize her blog, typically the way her blog works is at the top you have a title, and then you have like an intro and a hook kind of for the topic, and then she'll put like a Facebook sized image, and then she'll write some of the post, and then at an opportune moment she'll insert the Pinterest pin in the middle of the text there, and then the rest of the blog post. And so if someone decides to just hit the pin it button, they will find a Pinterest friendly image. And if someone's reading, we actually will write on the pin itself, like right above it in the blog post, we'll say, pin this for later, pin it for reference. Don't have time to finish the post, pin it for later, something like that. And that does encourage people to pin it, which helps a lot with your Pinterest algorithms as well, if you have other people sharing your content. That's a great tip. All right. So, and speaking of tips, so I know I've got lots of questions here, but
Okay.
Can you give me like 3 things that you would suggest an online coach focus on for success on Pinterest?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because anytime somebody is starting to get interested or learning about a new platform, it can be overwhelming to try to think you have to like know it all or have that, like to have it perfect before you start it, right? And just like with any platform, YouTube is a great example. With Pinterest too, like there are so many things you could learn about it. I don't even, I don't know everything about how to optimize. I really don't. And I am an expert. So if you focus on a few things though, you will see account growth. You absolutely will. And I would say, if I were going to say 3 things to focus on, I would say number 1 would be the click-worthy image. And we started to talk about that a little bit. Make it bright colored, make it on brand for you, brand it subtly, but brand it. So the best thing to do is to usually like just write, like do your website or a very subtle watermarked logo somewhere on the pin. You don't want it to look like an ad, so to speak, because people on Pinterest tend to gravitate away from that, but you do want it to be subtly branded for a couple reasons. Number one, it adds to the credibility of the pin, because there is sort of like there is unfortunately, like on every platform, there's some spam on Pinterest. So if people see that it's branded, they typically they'll think, okay, this looks legit. Like I'll click on it if they're interested in the content. This isn't clickbait. And then also just from a branding perspective, when they're on Pinterest, they'll start to see your stuff and know what it is that you do. And there's that repetition factor that builds like, know, and trust without even us realizing it. So, right. So that's like the psychology thing. So the pins should be bright and easy to read, legible. People are not going to be seeing them in a feed they're going to be seeing them in a sea of other pins, basically. So you want yours to stand out and grab their attention. It's kind of like a billboard. If you're driving on the highway, you're going to go by a billboard really fast and you have to be able to read it and understand what it's telling you. Pinterest pins are the same because you're going to see it in a bunch of stuff and you're going fast. So making out like really branded and standout graphics would be the first one. The right ratio. Let me ask
you a question here. So sure. When we're talking about branding, a lot of people, the coaches, the consultants, bloggers, YouTube, experts, they are the brand, right? Mm-hmm. So my question is, should they be putting a picture of themselves on any of these images that they're creating?
That's a really good question. That's such a good question. And it really depends a lot. There is the general wisdom on Pinterest that sometimes pins that don't have faces do better. But it's one of those things that you hear about, and no one really knows exactly where that came from. And it's true in some accounts and not true in other accounts. So what I usually do is I'll create some with the person's image and some without, and see which ones do better. And I've had clients, because like you said, with a lot of the coaches and consultants, they are the brand, whose pins that had their face on them, if it was high quality photography, did so much better than those that didn't. So it really depends. And I would try both and A/B test them and see what works the best for your particular brand. But there's definitely a possibility that if you have a strong branded look about you, if you will. I'm thinking of one of my clients in particular who's like one of those, she's a phenomenal, like super like person who, travels a lot, and she's just got a very strong brand that people know. She's got a very unique look about her. Her pins do fantastic that have her on them. So it really depends, is the answer, unfortunately, but I would try them for sure. And then as far as other success factors, the keyword optimization is key. Excuse the pun, but it's not the sexiest part of Pinterest. It's not as fun as making graphics. It's not the best part or the most fun part for most people, although I find it fun. But so a lot of people, unfortunately, will either skip over it or they won't give it the attention that it needs. And that's a big mistake. So that I would say focus on knowing your audience, knowing what keywords they're searching for, researching that, plugging what you think they might be searching for into the bars and seeing what they're really searching for, things like that. And then the third thing is consistency, because the Pinterest algorithm prefers it if you are pinning pretty much every day, at least like 8 or 9 different times during the day, throughout the day at all different times. And the Pinterest community is pretty international. So there are people who are up at all hours, right? Doesn't matter. There's no time of the day where you can't pin. So the good news is that, as I mentioned, it is a low maintenance platform, because you can sit down once every 30 days or once every 60 days and do all your scheduling in advance and then set it and forget it and come back 30 or 60 days later, because you can use scheduling software. And there really is only one that's available right now, but it's a great one, and it's called Tailwind. It's about $15 a month or $119 for the year. And it's well worth it. If you're serious about your Pinterest strategy, you have to be pinning all day, every day, but you can't be pinning all day, every day. So you do it as a scheduler. So I would say those are the 3 things: standout branded visuals, keyword optimization and research and then optimization, and then consistency. And there's always more to learn. There's Tailwind tribes, and there's group boards, and there's, how do you use your Pinterest in conjunction with your email list and all this stuff. just like with any platform, there's always more things you can do to optimize your reach. But if you just focus on those three key things, you will find that your account will grow, and your Pinterest, what's it called? There's a word for it. Your Pinterest authority will grow, and you will over time see the kind of growth that will drive the kind of traffic that'll make a difference to your email list and make a difference to your business.
I think that that's really important to really stress here. When you start thinking about some of the other platforms that we're using to market our business, where we have Pinterest, when you start pinning more often, it sounds like you're basically bumped up. You have a popularity contest in a way that you're winning. So is it true then that if you were to actually stop for a while, that your popularity would then decrease, or would your previous pins and all of that energy and everything that you put into it keep it going?
That's a great question. So first of all, I would say that if you have one account that is properly keyworded and has great pins, and the content is on point, and it's content that people want to read about and stuff, but that person's only pinning 3 or 4 pins a day consistently. And then you have another account where the person's content is, not that special, and it's like, they're not really taking time to make their pins look good, and they've totally skipped keyword optimization, or they didn't really do a good job with it or whatever, but they're pinning, 40 or 50 pins a day. Like, that first person's still going to do better on Pinterest because it's kind of a long game. So it's definitely more about quality than quantity. And where quantity plays into it, it's really more about consistency. But every account is a little different as far as whether your optimal situation is to have 15 pins a day or 30 pins a day or 40 pins a day. So it's definitely, quality is really important. And as far as, I forget the second part of your question. I'm sorry.
Well, I was thinking about whether or not the pins that you had in the past would keep that momentum going. If you for whatever reason you stop.
Yeah. So qualitatively speaking, yes, if you stop pinning for like a month, say your tailwind queue runs out and you're on vacation and you're like, I'll get to it in a few weeks or in 4 weeks or whatever. If you have an account that's been around for a little while, like, at least 6 months, 9 months, something like that, even more. I mean, some of my clients have been pinning now for, a few years. You can ride that through. Like, it's not going to, all of a sudden your traffic's not going to go boom, because it is like this evergreen thing. And the longer you're pinning and the more Pinterest cred you have, the more other people are repinning your content for you, even when you're not repinning and that kind of thing, because they're repinning the things that they find that they like of yours to their boards. So it definitely, in the beginning, I would say the consistency is like more important. And then if you later on, once you've achieved a little bit of a success with it, if you stop for a little while, you'll be okay. You'll just, you might see your numbers go down a little bit, but you'll be able to ride it out, is what I generally see with most of my clients. And also some of the gurus that we were talking about that word earlier, that I've taken classes with and whatnot to learn about how they do it.
Well, I really love that. I know, like, with other Web 2.0, for example, when you stop, you go on vacation or something, the algorithms are against you, a sense, and it takes you weeks and weeks of hard work to start building it up again. So I love that, depending upon the amount of energy that you're putting into it and the consistency that you're putting into it, knowing that that's actually going to be in your favor in the long run when you do need a little bit of a break.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I am really curious about something. So,
okay.
I think that, for those of us who are watching this, we want to know what's possible for us. We've heard a lot of, there's golden in them there heels, that story, get on Instagram, start doing IGTV, and start doing videos all the time. And, you're gonna soar, and so we've heard all of these things, and it doesn't really work for some people, and some people, they have wild success. But what I think a lot of people who may not be using this platform want to know is what's possible. Like, how much time do you think, I guess this would be the first question, how much time do you think someone has to put into it, like months, pinning 30, 40 a day before they're going to start seeing a lot of traffic? And then tell us another story, like maybe a story of one of your clients who's reached a great deal of success, so that people here watching can really feel motivated and inspired to really, decide one way or another if they're really going to go into this.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, so there's a bunch of questions there. So I would say that as far as what's possible, I think that, well, let me start with like a common workflow. So for my clients, for instance, now granted, usually they're hiring me to do a setup for them, and I'm setting up their Pinterest profile for them. And the way that I do it is, I don't like to set it up and be like, okay, now you have a profile. You have no idea what I did. You don't know how to do it yourself. Like, that's not what I do. I do things a little bit differently because I'm not working for like prolific like bloggers who generally outsource a lot of this. So I set up the account, and then I give part of what I deliver is 2 videos. One of them is a video that shows you exactly what I did and what the decisions, like why I made all the decisions about how to set up your profile and how to do the keywords and whatnot. And then I also do a video to show the custom workflow that I've developed for that client in Tailwind, to show them exactly what they need to do every 30 days or every 60 days when they sit down to do their scheduling for the next month. About half of them do it themselves, I'd say, and the other half have like a team member, like a VA or a content manager that watches the video, learns how to do it, and then does it. So I usually tell them that once you have it set up optimally, it's going to require usually around 2 to 3 hours a month for you to sit down in one sitting and schedule out all your pins for the next month. Now you also, once you get the hang of it, you could kind of rejigger the math a little bit and sit down and do it all for the next 60 days or the next 90 days, and not like set it and forget it and then come back in 60 days or 90 days. But you're generally going to need to budget about 2 to 3 hours a month for scheduling. So that means rescheduling all your own repins and scheduling other people's content that you're pinning to your boards as well, to create that sort of magazine-like experience for your ideal client, and to populate your boards with other people's content as well, because that's what you do on Pinterest. Then you also need to budget probably about 2 to 3 hours every month to make some new pins and possibly make some new boards, because there is something to be said. Pinterest likes it when you're creating a little bit of new content on a fairly regular basis too. So that could look like every month when you sit down to do that, you spend a couple of hours making a few new pins, say 3 or 4 new pins for each of your 2 new blog posts that you posted during the month of September. And you pin those and you add those to your stable of content that now will be repinned for time, for months and years. So that would be what you'd need, is like 2 to 3 hours a month to do your scheduling, and about 2 to 3 hours a month to repurpose your content, which is creating pins from blog posts, creating pins from your YouTube channel, etc. As far as like what's possible, I'll pause for a second because I'm talking a lot. Does that help with like an idea of like what you need to put into it as far as a workflow?
I like that. Yeah, I think that's really important for a lot of people listening, so that they can know, should I even get into this, right? But, moving forward, they want to know, is it going to be worth it? So what's really possible in a short amount of time? Are they going to get a lot of traffic?
Right. So I definitely would say, as far as what's possible, people definitely need to know that Pinterest is not an overnight success thing. It's not like it's low maintenance, but it's not, like the next morning you're going to wake up and you're going to have 20 discovery calls booked. It's not going to work that way. But I would say that realistically speaking, by around 60 or 90 days, as long as you're in a niche that's not too niched. That's my dog. If you're in a niche that's much more like niched, if you will, like a very specific niche, you can maybe double each of the times that I'm talking about, because it takes a little longer to build the audience and for Pinterest to index like what your account is about. But generally speaking, like if you're a life coach or a business coach or a parenting coach or whatnot, usually after about 90 days of being active, of having your account active and doing the regular pinning as I recommend and everything, you'll start to see maybe around 150 to 250 clicks through to your website and your content every month. That's generally what I'll see. Sometimes, like I said, if it's a more niched client, it'll be less than that. And sometimes I've seen more than that. And then over the, maybe at around the 6 to 9 month mark, maybe you're seeing around 400 to 500 a month. if you've ever talked to a blogger who's on Pinterest, like a food blogger or a lifestyle blogger, a travel blogger, and you say, I get like 250 or 500 clicks through Pinterest to my website every month, they'll go, that's not a lot at all. Because for them, they're blogging 3 or 4 times a week and they're creating tons and tons of pins. As a coach or a consultant or a course creator, you might be doing 1 blog a week or 2 blogs a month or even 1 a month, and that's fine. So you're going to be, you might not get as much traffic as, say, a blogger, for instance. And then I have clients so then the conversion rate comes into play. So you got to think about, what is your current conversion rate? When people hit your website now, in your blog posts and your landing pages, what are you getting for conversion? Are there ways that you can optimize that as well? So I have one client who's been on Pinterest I have clients that have been on it for like 6 months and 9 months. And then I have one that's been on Pinterest actively, actually 2, for like 3 years. And one of my clients that's been active for 3 years gets probably, I'd say, about 1,200 to 1,300 hits to her website per month. And she's generally getting about like 20 opt-ins a day, roughly, to her email list from Pinterest. And then I know of one coach in particular whose course I took, and I know she's totally legit because I've been in the back end of her Pinterest. All her numbers are like nothing. She definitely is totally legit on this. She gets also about 20 opt-ins a day now after about 2 years of actively pinning on Pinterest. So if you think about it, what does that, what would that mean for your business? What would it mean if you had 500 hits a month to your website that you didn't have before? What would it mean if you had 20 people opting into your list every day? Not all of those people are going to buy or even stay on your list forever, right? But, how does that work with your current system? What do you know about your current opt-in rates and your current subscribe rates and whatnot? So you kind of have to do that math to figure out the ROI. And then there was something else I was going to say about her, but I'm forgetting. So does that help a little bit?
Yeah, it really does.
Okay.
And I think what's really important, like what I do in my business, for example, is to try to help my clients create a strategy that helps them live the life they want. And most of the clients, if not all of the clients that I work with, are trying to create some freedom in their life. And the last thing that they want is to be bogged down with another platform and strategy that's going to create a whole lot of work. So one of the best things I love about this is, the low maintenance aspect of it,
Yep.
the consistency that you have to put into it, just a little bit every month. So, getting those kinds of results with, that minimal amount of work is amazing. I mean, when we think about some of the other platforms where people are posting many times a day, with regard to having to work with algorithms and engaging people, which of course is a wonderful thing because we're in this business to build relationships. We never ever want to get away from that fact. But when we're trying to live our own lives, I think it's really important for us to smart, to create a strategy that helps us do what we want to do when we want to do it. Isn't that what freedom is all about, right?
100%. Absolutely. I think that, I think that Pinterest really is a great platform for people who value work-life balance and who value automation in their business, because it really is. You can't set it once and forget it and never, go back to it and expect success, but you can set it and forget it once every 30 days, once every 60 days, and move on to do other things. For me in my business, I love batch work. Like I love working in sprints and batching my tasks. Like I'm kind of obsessed with that stuff. So that's one of the reasons I think it attracts me and why I liked it too. Cause I was like, ooh, I can batch my tasks. I can, really sprint and get a lot done and then not come back to it for a while and see some results. So absolutely.
I can see someone actually, spending an entire day, like when we think about any kind of job, a job, you're sitting down at a desk and you're just plugging away, for 6-8 hours doing something. But whether or not that person doing that job is getting that payback, we want a return on our investment. And that's what I love so much about this.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I think you're right on.
So I know there's a lot of people that are watching this that are probably kind of interested in, bending your ear, really wanting to maybe look into working with you. How can
Sure.
they get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is janaomedia.com. So it's my first name, Jana, and then O, which is the first letter of my last name, and then the word media.com. I have all my prices and packages on my website for content automation projects that I do, and for Pinterest, all the Pinterest services that I offer. My signature service is the setup where I set up the whole thing soup to nuts. It's a done for you service, but it also sets you up to be able to maintain the account on your own, or with your team member. And then I do have a checklist that people can grab if they want to. It's at janaomedia.com /Pinterest checklist, all one word. And it is a Pinterest checklist for setting up your account. It is only for coaches, course creators, consultants, our people, service providers. So if there's anyone who's listening who is interested in learning about using Pinterest for their Etsy store or for products, or if they're like bloggers, but not in the like coaching or consulting world, there's a lot of great resources out there for you, but this checklist won't be as relevant. But if you're someone who's in our world, check that out. It's janaomedia.com /Pinterest checklist. And that's my lead magnet. So if you would like to subscribe to my Pinterest emails, you get instant access to that checklist. And that's where you can find me. And then I am excited to be part of your Facebook group too. So if anyone has questions about anything we talked about today, or questions for me, and they want to pop them in the Facebook group, I'm happy to go in there. Maybe just tag me so I can see that you posted it, and I can answer questions there if you want.
Terrific. Well, we're going to make sure that we get that checklist in the comments below for people so they can go and grab that.
Okay.
And just anybody watching here, if you have any questions, maybe you're watching on the replay, maybe you're watching it a second time, because I think some people might actually want to watch it a second time, because there was so much meat in here in this video. So definitely, if you have any questions that pop up to you, make sure that you put them here in the comments below so that Jana can actually answer them for you. Sure. It looks like we actually do have this checklist here in the comments. Great. So we can have you just click on that and grab that checklist for you. That's great.
Okay, great.
I want to thank Samantha for doing that.
Thanks, Samantha. Right. Nice. Yeah. Nice job.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on here with me today. It really meant so much to me, because this is exactly what it is I want for my clients. I want them to be able to not have to work so hard, and to kind of, just drop the hustle and be smart about their marketing. I mean, marketing is something that we all have to do, right? Yep. We want to create our freedom and our dreams, but we just don't want to be banging our head against the wall. So I love that you have so many types of services that can really help people a lot. That's really great for people to be able to check out. So I really want to thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me. This was really fun. I know it's a lot of info. I hope I'm not overwhelming anyone.
No, not at all. I'm sure that they all appreciate it. We got a thank you from Zoe, and I think Asma said thank you, and Samantha says thank you. And so a lot of people really, really enjoyed having you. So
thank you. That's so sweet. Thank you for telling me. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, well, I am going to sign off and say goodbye to you. We will talk to you again in the group.
Okay, sounds great. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Sharon.